in a barn, we have pigs that are going to be high performing pigs and they are going to require a lot of nutrients to grow. And then we have other pigs that, for whatever reason, because they were the last one on the parity, things like that, they grow a little bit slowly. They don't need as much protein as the other ones, because they are not able to deposit it at the same rate. So in this way, instead of feeding a population and feeding a group, or in the case of some of the integration businesses, that they feed all the farms that they have in a country with the same formula, what we do is feed the individual pigs. In this way, the pig that doesn't need that much protein doesn't eat it and it doesn't excrete it. So we are saving about 40% of nitrogen excretion. In nitrogen excretion, we are reducing 40% in nitrogen excretion, and we are reducing about 30% in protein intake.
Welcome to Swine Canada. My name is John Patience, and I'll be the host for today's podcast. We have Berta Llorens, who is a PhD student at Laval University and a research assistant at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada's Research Centre in Sherbrooke, Quebec. And how are you? How are you today?
Good. I'm very happy to be here.
Very good. Well, I'll try not to change that, Berta. Okay. And we're delighted to have you here because I think it's a very timely topic that you are going to be discussing. And so let's get right in it. But before we do that, maybe you could give us a background on yourself, sort of where it all started in the Pyrenees, I understand, a very beautiful part of Spain. And then how you got to Laval University and where you are today.
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in a family farm. I'm from, as you said, from the northeast of Spain in Catalonia, and my family have been farming for generations and generations and generations, and currently we are producing growing finishing pigs, nursery pigs as well, and also growing chicken. So I've been surrounded by monogastrics my whole life. It's going to the farm and having hands-on experience and working there and being with the animals. It's something that has captivated me since I was very young. I would go with my dad and help him, and with my grandpa and help him as well. So I think that everything, my passion for animal science kind of started there. Then once it was time to choose a bachelor, I chose agricultural engineering, and that gave me like a broad point of view in both animal science and plant science. So I'm an animal nutritionist with a little bit of different background because I'm not a vet, I'm an engineer. And also, I know a little bit of plant science. So it's something that has helped me a lot, especially during my PhD or at the beginning of my PhD. And after I finished my bachelor in Universitat de Lleida, in Catalonia as well, I went to Universidad de Zaragoza to do my animal nutrition master's, and that master is formulated as a kind of interview or seminar master, and we have professors from all over the world, and one of them was Dr. Candido Pomar, who is currently one of my advisors, and he did a class about modeling in pigs and modeling pig requirements and about precision feeding, and that kind of changed my life because it was, I think that it's safe to say that they were the best hours that I have been in class, because I had so much fun playing with the model and understanding it and seeing what it could do and imagining it at a farm level and how it could change and evolve how we are feeding our pigs, which is something that I think that I've always had the notion of we're doing good, but we could do better. and that was like a way to do better, that it seemed very clear to me, and it really opened my mind. So when that class finished, I went to Dr. Candido Pomar and told him if I could do my master thesis with them, and he was very happy to say yes. So we started working together. The only problem is that COVID came and the pandemic came, so I was working from Spain, doing a PhD project based in Canada, and that was a little bit of a struggle. But because it was modeling and working with life cycle assessment as well, it was good enough to start. And then from that. That project raised a lot of questions in me. Some of them I still I still haven't found the answers, but I'm very excited to try to find them. And then Candido and Dr. Aline Ramos as well invited me to come to Canada and do my PhD with them.
Swine Veterinary Partners offers a full range of animal health and production services to Canadian pork producers. We approach health management through personalized solution with concern for profitability while taking into account performance and the well-being of your animals.
You're really in a unique position because you have all that experience from your family and being on the farm and having that very hands-on experience. And now you have the opportunity to be studying in a fairly sophisticated aspect of nutrition, i.e., modeling and precision feeding.
Mhm.
That really puts you in a really unique position to move forward and help the pig industry of the future.
Yes, I think that knowing how things are done in real life in a commercial farm where with 4,000 pigs gives you an inkling on how to manage, or how to guide research to be helpful for producers, because sometimes it feels like it can be a gap between what we are researching and what's really helpful. But also we have to know that between that the research is slow, and it takes a long time until things are able to come to the farm. So
Yeah.
it's a duality that we have to be mindful of, and try to go in the direction that the industry needs.
We probably should mention that you were also a research assistant at the Agriculture Agri-Food Canada Research Center at Sherbrooke. And I gather then that's where some of your research is being done. So you're kind of co-located in Quebec and in Sherbrooke. Is that correct?
Yes, I spent my first 6 months of the PhD in Quebec doing my classes, and now I'm in Sherbrooke just doing my research, which I'm really loving it.
Very good. Wonderful to have that kind of support, right? Two institutions helping you with your work. So let's talk then first off about precision feeding and what exactly does that mean from a nutritional point of view, but also what does it mean from a pork producer's point of view?
So in nutrition feedings, from a nutrition point of view, what we do is that we identify all the animals, and we're able to provide all the animals in a barn or in a farm by with a diet, with a mix of feeds that reaches their daily requirements, their daily necessities. So, in this way, we are not only accounting for over time variation of requirements during the growth phase, but we're also accounting for individual variation. Because if you go to a barn, you will have bigger pigs, smaller pigs, the ones that grow faster, the ones that grow slower. So in that way, what we're doing is feeding the individual instead of the population, and an amount of nutrients that we are not giving to the pig because they don't really need them. So in this way, we are improving nutrient efficiency without compromising animal performance.
Right. And I just did a quick calculation while you were speaking there, just to
Mhm.
kind of put this into language that some of our audience would understand in terms of that variability. And that if we assume a coefficient of variation in pigs at approximately market weight, in the range of 10%, because I can do that calculation easily. It might only be 8, but it's in that range. That means we've got a range in body weights of 25 kilos plus or minus, and at 120 kilograms market weight. That is a very big weight range.
Yes.
You bet. So you are trying to address in part that variation by feeding pigs the nutrients they require and no more. So you're really feeding on an individual animal basis. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, it's that in a barn we have pigs that are going to be high performing pigs, and they are going to require a lot of nutrients to grow, and then we have other pigs that, for whatever reason, because they were the last one on the parity, things like that, they grow a little bit slowly. They don't need as much protein as the other ones, because they are not able to deposit it at the same rate. So in this way, instead of feeding a population and feeding a group, or in the case of some of the integration businesses, that they feed all the farms that they have in a country with the same formula, what we do is feed the individual pigs. In this way, the pig that doesn't need that much protein doesn't eat it and it doesn't excrete it. So we are saving about 40% of nitrogen excretion. In nitrogen excretion, we are reducing 40% in nitrogen excretion, and we are reducing about 30% in protein intake, which
Wow.
when we
Wow.
go to a production point of view, that's a lot of money.
Yes, that's a lot of money and that's a lot of environmental impact. Or it means we don't need as much land to apply the manure onto in a sustainable manner,
Mhm.
right?
Exactly.
And I presume you are reducing the phosphorus excretion as well.
Yes, although phosphorus excretion is not as give or take as protein, but yes, we also have an important reduction in phosphorus when we use precision feeding techniques.
It's a fascinating subject, Berta, and I'd like to ask you one question. I don't know if it's a fair question, but
Mhm.
I've often wondered about it, and that is, but I wanted to go back and say that when you're talking about the slower growing pigs and the faster growing pigs, the slower growing pigs would get less nutrients or fewer nutrients because they don't need them. That slower growing pig is already a pig that's not as profitable for the farmer as the faster growing pigs would be.
Mhm.
And if you're overfeeding that pig, then you're making it even less profitable. So what you're doing is you are optimizing the potential profit on these animals, um, uh, and overcoming variations that are due to feed intake as one example. There would be others as well. Yeah.
Mhm.
And the question I have is, faster pigs eat more feed and slower pigs eat less feed. What would be or is that a fair statement? Maybe I better.
I mean, it could be not all of the, like, we can have high performance pigs with a very low feed conversion ratio, and we can have low performing pigs with very big feed conversion ratio. So it's not always true. It can be true, but it's not always true.
True. Okay, so what you're saying then is the correlation between.
I would say that they need more nutrients. They need more nutrients daily. They are more nutrient efficient than feed efficient. That's a truer statement. That
Okay,
when we
good,
speak about nutrients, it's better than to speak about feed in this case for me.
great. That's a great clarification, Bert. I appreciate that. That helps me to understand the subject a little bit better. So when you are feeding pigs using precision methodologies, um, what nutrients are you looking at? What nutrients are you adjusting, and what nutrients are you not adjusting?
Right now, we are working mainly in protein and amino acids. The overall minerals, the main minerals like calcium and phosphorus, and not looking at energy because we haven't done the research yet. It's probably going to be some of the next steps in the team. But right now, what we are adjusting daily, so we have two diets. One that is very rich in nutrients, in protein and in macro minerals. But then the micro minerals and the vitamins are the same in the two diets. And our secondary diet doesn't have a lot of protein. So just so you can make an idea, our protein-rich diet has crystalline amino acids, but like a 20% of soybean meal, and our poor nutrient diet barely has any soybean meal. So they are they differ greatly in the protein intake.
Very good. Yeah. And so then do you blend those two diets?
Yes, we use we utilize intelligent feeders that recognize the pig, and each day the pig gets a blend of those two feeds to make the diet that he's going to be eating.
Right, right. Um, and so tell us then a little bit specifically about what your PhD project is and what exactly, what aspect of precision feeding are you looking at?
So first of all, what I'm doing in my PhD is trying to find alternative feed ingredients to corn because during my research we found that that corn is or that the CO2 emissions in pork production are highly related to feed ingredients and feed formulas. And here in Quebec, in Canada, one of our main CO2 emission producing crops is corn, and it's also the feed ingredients that it's more important in our diets. So right now we are working on trying to see if byproducts or other products that we haven't thought about it so far, for example, forages, may be a solution, and the inclusion of those feed ingredients, especially by the end of the growth period, they could help reducing a little bit the CO2 impact, which in Canada is already quite good. I have to say that, but it could we can always work to improve it a little bit more.
Right, right. Very good. Yeah, and that, as I was listening to you, Bert, I'm thinking, wow, what a challenge that will be because the one thing about corn, at least now that I'm living in Iowa, um, and the work we've done here and many other people have done as well, corn, apart from its other advantages, is also one of the most uniform basal ingredients that we have in our diet. So, the variation in energy in corn is in the range of maybe 8%. For wheat, it's maybe 12%. For barley, 15%, and field peas, 22%.
Hmm.
So you are tackling well, first off, you're tackling a holy grail of feeding pigs, right? Corn, but you're also trying to become more precise, but using ingredients that may not be as uniform. So
Hmm.
that's a great project to take on because that will be very, very important to the industry.
Yeah, and another thing that it's important to keep in mind is that the feed ingredients that we can use in Quebec to reduce corn, they may not be the same, or they are for sure that they are not they are for sure not the same as the ones that I would use in back in Spain, because
Yeah,
our climate, our product, natural production is totally different. So we need to. I think that globally the industry has the same problems in most of the countries, especially developed countries. They have the same burning issues, but the way how we solve them, or which are the key ingredients in each case, they greatly differ. Because here in a North American context, I would say, where the soybean is produced nationally, the corn is produced nationally, most of the feed ingredients are nationally produced. Our main problem is corn. But if you move to an European context where our protein source is still soybean, but it's not produced in Europe, we need to import it. Then that's our main hot topic, or our main problem to solve, to improve the environmental impact. So
Yeah.
while individual precision feeding has a small benefit when looking at CO2 emissions, because feed has a huge importance here in the Canadian context. If you move to the European context, the environmental benefits of just applying individual precision feedings and reducing a lot the amount of soybean that your pigs are consuming, that is going to change, and the environmental benefits of that are going to be way bigger because of the transport associated to that feed ingredient.
Right. Yeah. That's that's yeah, that's right. So I guess it kind of is intuitive. The way you're describing it to me, Berta, which is very well done, by the way, is when you uh, the very concept of precision feeding would suggest that the solutions have to be geographically related. That what works in one location may not, or what might be precise in one location may not be precise in another.
Yes, and also I think that we need to look at the whole production system, and we need to be more circular about our productions and tie the animals to the land and the land to the animals. So our animals are producing a manure that for us it's a byproduct, it's a waste, but for a agricultural farmer it's a huge benefit, because if you utilize that correctly, your land it's way stronger than if you only use chemical fertilizers. So I think that we need to do like a little bit of a step backwards and go a little bit back to the beginning, where the animals and the land were in a closer relationship that what they currently are, and look at what we have and what can we do with what we have, instead of how can we produce more and more and more. Because sometimes to reach that maximum, or to reaching the maximum or the minimum feed conversion rate, you are utilizing a feed ingredient that you don't have and you need to bring, and that adds a economical cost and environmental cost. So what's the problem with with your pigs growing a little bit slower, if or needing a little bit more feed, if that feed is cheaper than the one that you would have a very good feed conversion ratio. So that's why I prefer to look at nutrients instead of feed, because as long as your nutrient conversion ratio is good, and your nutrients are not excessively costly, you can produce pigs in a more sustainable way, or in a more circular way than what we are currently doing, I think.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Very, very, very interesting. I can see why you got excited about the topic, and modeling, of course, is something we're going to see much more of in the future than we have in the past. Now, can we just take a few minutes, Berta, and talk about the environmental impact of pork production and how precision feed, and you've already alluded to it a number of times, but being more specific and more direct on how precision feeding can have a favorable um, impact on the impact of the pig industry on the environment.
Mhm. So what I did on my last research was I compared a conventional three-phase feeding system, where all the pigs in a barn get the same feed for 28 days. We did 28-day phases, which it's a little bit longer than what the industry is currently doing, but it represents it well enough. And where all the feed ingredients for that were grown in Quebec, Canada. And we used real farm performance data, and we modeled not only our growing finishing farm, but we also modeled the nursery farm and the farrowing farm, in a conventional scenario. Then in another treatment or the other treatment of our project was everything the same up until the growing finishing farm. And the growing finishing pigs, instead of being fed in a conventional three-phase feeding system, were individually fed. So they were fed daily tailored diets, as I said, and they were much more nutrient efficient. So with that, and then we took it a step further, and we also accounted for the manure management. So for the emissions from the manure storage, the emissions from the farms itself, and then the emissions from the application to the land. With that, what we got was a 5% CO2 emission reduction when comparing individual precision feeding versus conventional three-phase feeding. And then between 16 and 80%, 18% of reduction in acidification and eutrophication environmental impacts, which are also quite important. And that's where we saw the biggest benefits, because we're targeting protein, as I said, but we still got a nice result in a nice reduction in CO2.
Interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting. And you've mentioned a number of times that you're looking at protein and amino acids.
Mhm.
And so I assume that you're looking at protein because that is that's going to be reflected in nitrogen emissions. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Great. Well, this has been really interesting, Berta. So, where are you at in your PhD program now? How much longer?
Right now, I'm in my second year. I'm about to start, in some month, I will be starting a live trial that I'm very excited for, because I've
Yes,
been modeling for a long time. So it's always exciting to get your hands on farm. I'm hoping that I will have some promising results to show.
fantastic. Very good. Well, good luck to you on that.
It's time for our famous three.
Before we let you go, we have our three questions that we like to ask of
Mhm.
all of our guests. And so the first one is do you have a favorite book or other source of information on some aspect of pig nutrition, pork production generally, that you would recommend to our listeners?
I don't know if favorite, but one that I've been opening a lot in the last 4 years with my masters and my PhD is NRC. I think that it has a very good explanation of the base concepts, and it helps you build your knowledge from that. So it's been really helpful to go back to the NRC and clarify some of the concepts sometimes during my academic years.
Great. Very, very good. And you might be pleased to know that the National Academy of Sciences has seen fit that they are starting now with the development of the next edition of the NRC requirements. So that'll be very nice. And Marie Pierre from your
Mhm.
part of the world is on that committee, by the way. So,
Yep.
say my next question for you then is not thinking about pig production at all, but just generally a book of any kind, whether it's for entertainment or personal development. Do you have a book that you would recommend of that nature to our readers, our listeners?
Uh, yes, one of the books that is closer to my heart is The Little Prince. I read it first when I was like 12, and since then I've been going back to it every 2 to 3 years. And every time it teaches me a different life lesson. So I think that it's a very good book. My grandpa recommended it to me, and he recommended reading it often to me, and I'm very happy of that advice.
Very good, very good. Hats off to Grandpa, right? And then the final question then is, do you can you describe what you think are the characteristics or behaviors of people in the pig world, academic world, production world, whatever, who are particularly successful, and what is it that has contributed to their success?
I'm not sure about that, but I'm a firm believer that hard work and passion and vision gives you success. So that's a little bit of what I plan to do. I think that I have a good vision, and I hope that I'm a hard worker. So as long as you believe in what you're working on, at least you will have personal success.
Well, great. I think that's a great observation, Berta. Thank you very much, Berta. I've really enjoyed our conversation today.
Thank you.
The journey of a hero has challenges, battles, and villains. But after the fight is won, new paths are open. And it's time to catch our breath and move forward. More powerful and super than ever. And you, hero of the swine industry, do you have your cape ready to take new flights? Swine Talks 2023, December 6th and 7th. Together, we're more super than any obstacle.